Hello and welcome to the agenda on Labour Social. Afternoon all. We've got a life after Narc there. We've got my mum. Hi mum. How you doing? Got Hayton Puds. We've got Glenn in there. We've got Craven Beer. We've got Gaynor. Anyway, so has anything happened this week? I've been away.
Yeah, there's loads happened. I'll tell you what hasn't happened.
Where do you want to start?
Well, I could start. We might as well throw this out to begin with, because one thing that hasn't happened and should be happening, I'm going to find the numbers now. So although there's been a lot of controversy over Labour selections and otherwise, Labour have almost all of their candidates selected. We are 1 week and we're basically 6 days, 22 hours and like something, a couple of minutes away from the deadline for nominations. Basically, it is 4 o'clock next Friday. So 7 days, 1 hour and 58 minutes, I should say. And Labour have 4 candidates to select.
Yeah.
So they've got 607 at the moment. They need 600. Actually, I think it's 600. Is it 611 or 12? I can't remember. But they need 4 or 5 more candidates.
What 627?
They don't really Northern Ireland.
627 is what you've got on your graphic there.
Oh, I can't remember.
I can bring that up if you want.
I can't remember. How many are there in Northern Ireland?
It
doesn't matter.
I don't know,
but either way, Labour are nearly done, is what I'm saying. Labour are nearly done. And there's been a lot of focus on Labour's selections for good reason in some ways and not so good in others. But do you know how many candidates Conservatives have got? 408.
Yeah, but I was thinking about this. There's loads of seats.
They've got a week to go.
Yeah, but there's loads of seats that they know they're not going to win. So it's just going to be a paper candidate, isn't it?
Yeah, but
City Centre, Liverpool, Manchester, Birmingham.
But think about but you've got to think about this, right? How is that going to look when people are analysing the results? If there's no Conservative candidate, if it's first of all, you're not going to tell me that there's like 200 odd seats that the Tories have got. I mean, there are 200 odd seats they've got no chance in, but they can't admit that. And the other thing is that's still going to reduce their overall vote across the country, because all of those few thousand votes here and there still add up. So it's still going to add up to a very low percentage of the vote across the country. So you do still need the no hope candidates standing to boost your overall vote for appearance's sake, if nothing else.
Yeah.
But I mean, wow. Reform UK have got more candidates selected than the Conservatives.
I know. That's mad, isn't it?
It's mad.
The Tories still need 200 candidates. That is. Yeah.
And some of those candidates, they'll not all be in the no hope seats. I've not going through it. It's not worth my time going through it. But some of them must surely be, because there's been another Conservative candidate. Well, I say he's not an MP anymore technically, but it was an MP who stood down today, just randomly announced. I mean, that's a shitty way to treat your party 1 week before deadlines. But another one has just announced they're standing down today.
Yeah.
I mean, they're an MP, so that must be a seat that they're targeting because they won it last time. So it could actually, there's a lot of things here could really help the tactical vote. The fact that Labour, because this time last week, Labour needed 100 odd themselves.
Yeah.
The fact that it's taken a while for them to get candidates selected in what might be some seats that they're not targeting, but maybe are tactical voting targets. So that's actually arguably helped, I would assume in most cases, the Lib Dems maybe get a head start.
Yeah.
So it's all I think it's quite interesting.
Well, I was going to say thank you to Craving Beer for the £5 super chat. Thank you. Tory campaign in chaos. Trump guilty on 34 federal counts. Easter doesn't have the only Good Fridays. Very true. We will come on to Trump in a moment. We're going to talk more about that in the Labour Social tonight. We're going to try and focus on British politics this afternoon. But some people are asking questions about the thumbnail. Yes, that was Rishi Sunak standing in front of 2 black circles that made it look like he was wearing Mickey Mouse ears. But we have our Tory bloke. Here's the Tory bloke here. He just stands in the way. He just basically moves to wherever you need him to be on the page, and he gets in the way. So he's covering the chat now. You can't see the chat. So if you're mean about the Tories, he'll come and cover the chat. All right. So I'm going to take him away now. Don't be mean to the Tories. Don't make me bring him back.
Low res Ross Kemp. Obvious.
Labour will be, but effectively be the government and opposition, says Gary Arnold. Yeah, there's a good chance.
Well, they actually could be. Actually, they could be the way they're carrying on at the moment. That might be what happens.
Should we talk about this a little bit? Because you talked about it on your show this morning.
I talked about it this morning.
But yeah, Labour, they're just great at just having a fight amongst themselves, aren't they?
Well, most of them aren't Labour. Most of them are outside of Labour, and they just have a few useful entryists in Labour who, I view them as, at the end of the day, my views are really clear. If your highest duty as a Labour candidate is to help Labour get into power, and the thing is, if you don't believe that a Labour government is the best thing for this country, you shouldn't even be a Labour member, quite frankly, but you certainly shouldn't be a Labour candidate. And that's the be all and end all. I
agree. Like, I mean, this is but then you've got someone like the former leader saying, political parties should be democratic and allow all different kinds of views. And I'm like, no, they don't allow socialists in the Tory party.
But which former leader? Do you mean Jeremy Corbyn?
Yeah.
Who did exactly the same thing in 2019.
Yes.
He randomly deselected a load of people, and he handpicked a load of his people, some of whom, by the way, people are having a pop at, they should be deselecting these people. Some of these people, it's not just that they've been campaigning against Labour. A couple of these people don't even have constituency officers. They're not even doing their job as an MP.
Yeah.
And that's the sort of thing that can damage the reputation of the entire party across the country. If you've got Labour MPs who don't even have a constituency office.
Yeah, you're right.
So, put the effort in. It's a lot of money. And if you don't think it's a lot of money, go off and do something else. It is a lot of money by most people's standards that you get paid to be an MP. Yeah. You get expenses to cover staffing and office. There's absolutely no excuse for not having an office because you don't pay anything for it or even have to organise it. You get public money for staff to do that for you.
Yeah.
Just turn up now and then, will you?
Yeah. I get it. I completely get it. I was going to say, like, it's not like the Greens allow oil industrialists to be part of the Green Party. Do you know what I mean? If it turned out that you were actively working against doing something about climate change, I'm sure they would throw you out. So if you're doing something against Labour getting into power, which is makes everything Labour say they're going to do like possible. Otherwise,
in no other, we've both worked and had taken home a pay packet. The idea that I could publicly slag off my boss and or my company and expect to keep my job is utterly ridiculous. In what other scenario could you do that?
Yeah.
In what organisation would you get to publicly slag off your boss and your organisation?
Yeah.
And keep your job.
Yeah. People are saying, I used to like Kia. I used to like Owen Jones in the chat there. That was Veg Pie. Gary Arnold saying, Truss estimated costs to our economy, 30 billion. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to put low-res Ross Kemp in front of that comment so people can't hear it. There he is. He's in the way. He's blocking your comments. But yeah, we don't want to hear any of this nasty things about the Tories, saying they're not very good. You've just done a video, haven't you, about the last 14 years of Tory malfeasance. Now, I didn't get a chance to watch this because I was on my way back from Scotland. I've literally come through the door. I get rid of Ross Kent there. How long was the video? How long was it? Like, did it take you all day?
No, I mean, I just rattled things off as quickly as I could.
Oh, okay,
and still didn't get through everything. Like I covered Brexit in about like one paragraph, for example. But it's absolutely insane what they've done. There's a whole litany of failures. And when I asked in the comment, I did ask in the comments, if anyone can think of anything that they did that was good, by all means put it in. The only thing I've had anyone say is legalise gay marriage. You go, okay, fair enough. But it was, but it wasn't. Because it was the Lib Dems that insisted on that as part of the coalition agreement, and most Tory MPs voted against it. It was during that period of Conservative government. So I'm quite happy to go, you can have that, because otherwise, if we don't allow the one good thing in that 5 years, it's almost like we can't also point to, for example, the 148,000 deaths due to austerity and The fact that the first thing they're having a pop at VAT at the moment. Oh, Labour are going to put VAT. Labour go, no, we're not. The first thing David Cameron became Prime Minister and George Osborne became Chancellor in May 2010. In June 2010, they put VAT up. First thing they did.
Yeah. Anyway, I've put a link in the chat there. 14 years of failure. That's to Phil's video, just listing the terrible thing. But let's talk a little bit about the Tory campaign this week. I mean, the Lib Dems has been quite fun. Ed Davey's been falling off things and going down water slides and stuff like that. Whereas the Rishi Sunak has just been making an absolute arse of himself everywhere he goes. He was tackled by a cone. He had low res Ross Kemp standing in front of a woman who was rolling her eyes and tutting and going, what?
I think to be fair, she was probably a Labour supporter.
Yeah, I know. But I love the way she conveyed so much without saying anything. I just like, what is this guy on?
But yeah, I mean, that might be why this has happened. So since the election was called, actually, Sunak and the Conservative Party got a slight boost in favourability, but it's come back down again. And although this is YouGov, it's actually, there's been other pollsters show the same thing. So it's actually a consistent pattern now that Labour and Keir Starmer's personal favourability has increased in the last week, and Sunak's and the Tories has gone down. And that's, the numbers are different with different pollsters, but that trend is the same across all of them.
Yeah.
So, that is real. When you've got all pollsters who use different methodology, might have different numbers, but show the same trend, it's as real as you can get. So it's not been a great week for them.
I think it's funny though that it is actually still -3 for the Labour Party. It looks like it's saying it's -3 and it's got, but because it's in minus figures, because it's
there's more disapproved than approved. But that's because we're not a two-party system. We just have an electoral system that assumes we're a two-party system.
Yes.
But another thing to note is my Ashcroft thing. Here, this is quite interesting. So it's not so much the stats here. What this is Lord Ashcroft of non-dom status, but he is a pollster. Right. And he was asking, the public, so what do you most associate with Labour and the Conservative in terms of their campaign? The actual results are irrelevant. What's most interesting to me is at the bottom. 35% couldn't name a single story associated with the Conservatives' election campaign, and 46% couldn't name a single story associated with Labour's campaign. And that tells us that most of the public are not yet tuned into this.
I know things are getting cut off there, but you can still see it says 35% could not name a story. 46% could not name a story. I think that's been Labour's problem for a long time, has been they just haven't got into the news the way that the Tories have.
But that's because of the way the news are. They're not interested in helping Labour. Most of them attack Labour. Yeah. But the point is that there's a good chunk of the public not at all. And this is what I've sort of said before. What you find is when there are shifts in the polling, people are getting really excited with every poll that comes out, and I am as well. But it's not. We don't expect anything to happen just yet. It's literally in the last week that a lot of people start to tune in. We may see some more engagement after the TV debate, because the TV debate, I mean, in 2019 they were watched by like 10 and a bit million people. So that's like a third of voters. So that could turn a few more people on. It's really annoying the timing because I'm in London next Wednesday, so I can't do a video on it.
I'll do the video for you. You just tell me what to say and I'll say it.
I don't know. I've got to go to bed. I mean, it's on really late as well. It's not just that they've got it on Tuesday. They've got it really late on Tuesday. So I've got to go to bed to be up at like 5:30 in the morning to go to London.
Yeah.
And really not. But anyway, the point is that a lot of the voters are not. Everyone's going to get excited by shifts in the polls. If there's going to be a major shift, it's not going to happen yet. It's going to wait a couple of weeks at least.
Well, I also want to talk about Angela Rayner being cleared of everything that she's done. We had, how many police officers was it? Was it 12 or 14 police officers? Remember. Greater Manchester Police.
Ridiculous waste of money.
The local council got involved, and also HMRC. The whole investigation probably cost hundreds of thousands of pounds because the right wingers wanted it to happen, so therefore it did. A complete
She
non-story
should
from
sue
start to finish.
Dan Hodges, apart from anything else, because he's still going on saying she got away with it. So
Yeah.
that, I am now assured by an actual professor of law, could potentially be defamatory.
Yes, I think it should. I think it is. I think that she's sue. But yeah, she's innocent, but the right wings are saying that she's guilty, like Dan Hodges, and Trump, who's been found guilty on 34 counts
by a jury of his peers.
Yeah, not by a judge. There's a lot of MAGA people out there with their IQs embroidered on the side of their hat, saying, "Oh, this is a judge. This is a bent judge. The judge," and it's like it was a jury, and apparently one of the jurists got all their information, all their news from Truth Social.
Yeah,
and she went, "Yeah, he did it."
Well, it didn't take him long as well. I mean, what was it? 3 dozen counts roughly, and it took him 12 hours. I mean, that is a guilty. That's just spending 12 hours, spending 10 minutes talking about each one and going, yeah, guilty. There was
exactly.
I mean, the jury apparently were about to be sent home for the first night. And then they said, no, we've made our decision. And the judge was actually taken aback because there's so many counts to deliberate on.
Yeah.
They only had 12, so.
But it was a bit like dominoes, wasn't it? Once one was found guilty, they were all going to be found guilty. Well, but yeah, fun and games for the next 6 months.
It wasn't even like a he says, she says thing. Like the guy who actually organised it, Trump's own person, said, yeah, he's guilty.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, we fiddled it. It's like, so what were they going to do with that?
There's some people are writing mean things about Rishi Sunak, about him having a piddliness and about being a booking bastard. So I'm going to have to block it. So sorry, I'm just going to have to block the chat for a little bit so we can't see the nasty things people are writing about our beloved Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak. Everyone's favourite Prime Minister.
5 weeks.
After the letters.
Did you see Penny Mordamp's video this week?
No, I didn't. But before you tell me about it, let's go to the super chat here from Craven Beer. Orange man for an orange suit. Very good. I like that. Thank you very much for the super chat. Tell me about Penny Mordamp's video. Was she holding a sword? Did she have a sword?
Unfortunately not. I did actually say she should have done. So she visited the palace for the last time because the leader of the Commons, she's also head of the Privy Council. So she's discharged her duties now. So she's obviously, because, I mean, Penny, people keep saying, oh, she'd have been better than Rishi Sunak. I'm not sure she would have been, she was like, all she did, for example, when she was defense secretary for literally a few months was get herself made an honorary captain and pose in like cosplay. So she's only interested in it. She's like Boris Johnson herself on a lower level. She's only interested in like dress up. And so she's making a meal of the fact that she's been to the palace. She's an important person. So she records her car journey all the way back out of the palace, with the palace guard and the police and all the rest of it, and posts it on Twitter. And I actually did say, I'm surprised she didn't go for it and wave her sword out the window while she was doing it. But, that was her. She knows she's not going back. She knows she's not going back. So she's making the most of it.
So you don't, well, she's not going back into government. Do you think she's going to lose her seat?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. She'd be one of the big beasts to lose.
She can come back. She could do a Churchill Wilderness years. That might be no bad thing for her. If she still harbours ambitions, she could easily let the Tories like beat each other to a pulp over the next few years. She'd probably do well to be well clear of that. And then she could always come back to Parliament, because a lot of these seats will probably go back to the Tories at some point, unless we do actually properly crush them and the Lib Dems take over. But,
we've got a Life After Narc is saying that the whole Dan Hodges thing's getting a bit stalkerish and told him to watch Baby Reindeer. Yeah. And Scott Walton, thank you so much for the super chat, mate. It's really kind. Thank you. Good to see Rishi's bouncer keeping the chat positive. Yeah, don't make me pink out low res Ross Kemp or you'll be in a lot of trouble. And Zombie Wolf 794 saying, I think Mordaunt is a nasty piece of work. And I'll tell you who else is a nasty piece of work. Piers Morgan, and yet I found myself agreeing with him.
Yeah, but he does this quite a lot. He's quite a funny chappy. Piers Morgan is a nasty, conceited, vindictive man.
Yes,
and yeah, I do quite like that people like Piers Morgan exist because because he doesn't just stick to an agenda that's given to him. He is actually expressing his thoughts. So, for example, when he worked for Fox News, he got himself sacked for arguing that actually America should probably have better gun control laws, which is the last thing you do as a Fox News employee. But he said it anyway because he believed it. And he, last night on Question Time, it's presumably what you're alluding to, said we should have another referendum on Brexit, shouldn't we? Because the majority don't seem to be happy with it.
Yeah, which we need to do.
And of course, he was the terror of Helen Whately in 2020 when he was basically pretty much the only person that was putting the government under real scrutiny over its pandemic response, largely because he was basically the only one who was allowed to. But he was, of all the journalists that were allowed to interview ministers, he was the only one who gave him a real tough time.
Yeah.
So he's capable. He's just an arsehole.
I'd rather just have people on the left who give the people in government a hard time. 5 weeks from today, we'll have a new government. We've got a question for you. Since there's no MPs at the moment, is there no Prime Minister?
Yes, the government still exists. Otherwise, it'd be quite awkward if someone invaded us. Actually, we haven't got the best government, so if people could avoid invading us for a little while.
Yeah, just 5 weeks. Just hold off on that invasion.
Well, even then, we don't want to start the Labour government with a crisis either. But yeah.
Well, they're going to start with a crisis anyway, Phil. I mean, the crisis of the last 14 years, the Omni crisis, the Omni shambles.
It would be a constitutional crisis if Rishi Sunak resigned.
Yeah.
Before the election. But he won't. People keep asking me, actually, do you think he will? Because he's clearly not enjoying himself. No, I think he's hating every minute. But at the same time, for his future employment or business associations, he cannot. I mean, if he's going to be wanting to earn big bucks in the future, which of course he is, someone that rich doesn't do a job for minimum wage. He cannot present himself as someone who cuts and runs when things get difficult. So he's got to go through it just for his future earning potential. But he's clearly not enjoying it.
Yeah. Mr. Whipster says, Davey is being a clown. Sunak is like the last one standing in PE team pick, excitedly shouting, pick me. Tice rhymes with lice. Starmer is the only adult in the room. The choice is clear.
Ed, the thing about Ed Davey, right? I'm actually going to have to defend this.
I'm quite enjoying it.
Stuff. Well, I'm not. I do think it's silly, but at the same time, what choice has he got? Because at the end of the day, it's the only thing. The media aren't reporting on the Lib Dems at all, are they? When was the last time you read an article on the Lib Dems this general election campaign? They're not. The only thing they're reporting on is his antics, and that's why he's doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why he's doing it. It's because it's the only way of them. It's utterly ridiculous that he has to. At least during a general election campaign, the media should. And I actually thought, that they would, but they obviously haven't been. Should start to be a bit more sensible and start actually reporting on things.
Sensible. We don't do sensible here.
If it were the fact that the media were spending a decent amount of time on the Lib Dems in proportion to their political footprint across the country, and Ed Davey was choosing to do these stunts, I would say, be careful, mate, and certainly don't have your mouth open falling into Lake Windermere.
Yes.
But the fact that I've seen one article when they launched their campaign. That's it. I've not seen anything that even attempts to discuss Lib Dem policies in the news. And it does, even The Guardian, which is probably the most friendly towards the Lib Dems, I've not seen anything.
Yeah.
8 different articles on Diane Abbott, nothing on the Lib Dems. So it's the immaturity of the Lib Dems that effectively is creating these stunts, the encouragement for politicians to pull stunts like this. So it's everything's the media's fault ultimately. Whenever I argue about politics for long enough, I end up blaming the media at the end of it.
Yeah. Well, there was a tweet that went around. I don't know if you saw this. I think it was Charlie Mullins, the guy who was Pimlico Plumbers. I think he still is Pimlico Plumbers. And he was very much on our side during the Brexit wars. And then as soon as that was over, he decided to become a massive Tory. And he's been putting around a picture of the Labour leader, Keir Starmer, and some members of the Labour shadow cabinet sitting in a room with Jimmy Savile.
Oh, that thing flying around. That someone did that a while ago, I think. I wondered if I haven't seen that. I haven't seen it for a while anyway. I know the image you're talking about. But I did see someone going, should we put the real picture out? Because the real picture has Gordon Brown in it. And I thought to myself, has someone been sharing that Jimmy Savile image again, which is obviously doctored? You can find a real image of Jimmy Savile campaigning with Margaret Thatcher if you want. But I mean, I don't play on guilt by association myself. I don't descend into that. But to actually make up a fake image of it is just like pathetic.
Yeah. John Hart, bit off topic, but you get a super chat. Thank you very much for that. Off topic, but should Western countries, especially the US, allow its weapons to be used by Ukraine against Russia in Russia?
Yes. Yeah, so the US have finally, I mean, there's two things to say about it. First of all, people have already pointed out most European countries, including the UK, had already given Ukraine permission to do this, and there has been zero nuclear retaliation. Secondly, the terms by the US, which are very fair, is that they are to be used against Russian assets in Russia that have been used to attack Ukraine. So they can't just randomly destroy a bridge unless that bridge has been transporting missile launchers to be used in. So basically, they're only attacking targets in Russia that have attacked Ukraine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think it's right, because at the end of the day, why should Russia be allowed to install some missile launchers or an airfield or have a troop build up on the Russian side ready to attack Ukraine, with Ukraine going, well, we can't do anything because they're still in Russia. They're at war. Yeah. They're as long as it's military targets that are directly related to the attack on Ukraine, it's totally justified. And at the end of the day, Russia chose to have this war.
Yes, they did, and they didn't have to. There was no reason for it except, imperialist aggression. Anyway, I was going to say also our dear friend Ben Wallace, Tory MP. Well, not an MP anymore. Former Tory MP. I've got to update.
There are no Tory MPs. There are zero Tory MPs.
I've got to update like so many entries on the private school mafia. But he tweeted yesterday that the letter that was left when Labour left in 2010. That's how desperate the Tories are.
Oh dear.
That's
sad. Never mind.
Desperation.
Well, the thing is,
I've got. Here you go. Here was a joke.
Again, don't get too much on the polls at the moment, because we, a good half of all the people who are going to vote in the general election are still not paying attention to even though it's now been called, which sounds mad. And I know to people who are interested in politics, that sounds insane. Why wouldn't people be paying attention now that the election has been called? But they don't, because they don't like it. But the polls have actually widened in the first week, only slightly. But, in terms of the poll of polls, I'm looking here, when the election was called, Labour had a 22-point lead on average. It's average across all pollsters. Now it's 23. So,
woo!
I mean, that doesn't matter. And that's probably still, I don't think Labour are necessarily going to get 46, 47% of the vote. But it doesn't matter. It just shows the general trend is that actually the Tories are not narrowing the polls. And it's a big if, because things can change. But if it stays like this with 1 week to go, then we really are in the territory of a big push on tactical voting could actually wipe them out.
Yeah.
It could actually be Canada 93.
I think that what Labour needs to do is do their own letter with 3 data points on how much our economy was worth in terms of GDP in 1997, how much it was worth in 2007, and how much it was worth in 2022. And the graph will go like this, and then it'll go straight. And they can just sort of hand draw that and then just take photos of it and say, look what the Tories left us with.
There's lots of things they could do, and I'm a big fan of doing it in a really simple graphical format. You could do the same with tax rates, and importantly, showing not just 2010 and 2024, but 2019 in the middle as well, because they always go, oh, it was the pandemic though. Yeah, 2019 is before the pandemic, mate.
Yeah. I mean, the foreign direct investments, how much foreign direct investment went off a cliff in 2016. It was
well, we know Labour aren't going to point that out. We know that they're going to be. So Labour's policy on that is to quietly deal with Brexit behind the scenes without making a fuss. That is their strategy, at least for the next Parliament.
Yeah.
But so they won't do that, but they could easily do metrics comparing 2010 with 2019, then 2024. And the justification for 2019 would also be the start of this Parliament. But they can also say, but that's also before the pandemic hit.
Yeah. Don Dudat saying Thatcher took 5 attempts to get Savile his knighthood. He stayed with her for Christmas for many years. She said she liked to know which of her MPs liked boys, as it made them easier to manipulate. Just in case you needed more reasons to hate Margaret Thatcher, there they are. Life expectancy would be a good one. That's gone down. Life expectancy.
Yes. Average height of 5-year-olds, because that's a measure of child nutrition.
Yeah, and obviously with Labour planning to bring in VAT on private school fees, and nearly all the Tories you've ever heard of being privately educated, you got the likes of Suella Braverman, etc. And last night you had Piers Corbyn and Piers Morgan both went to private prep schools. And then you've got Nigel Farage saying, it's disgraceful, blah, blah. And Suella Braverman has gone on to Twitter today to say that her mother scrimped and saved to send her to an independent school. And I'm like, yeah, she probably didn't go on holiday. There's people in this country now who have to make sacrifices that don't mean not going on holiday or buying food from Lidl rather than Tesco. No, they are skipping meals so their children can have enough food.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Question Time last night, Wes Streeton said quite a few useful things, and one of which on the issue of VAT on schools, he says private schools are just going to have to, cut their cloth according to their needs, whatever it's. And he says, just like state schools have had to do for the last 14 years.
Yeah, exactly. But the fact that you don't have to be inspected by Ofsted if you're a private school is a problem. You mentioned this morning, it's not just about teaching standards, it's a safety issue.
I've been a teacher, so I've been to a lot of Ofsted inspections, and a great deal of the emphasis is on safeguarding.
Yeah. And these private enterprises, which are apparently charities, there have been historic cases of the most obscene abuse of children, and they still are a company, and they still are a business making money each year for whoever.
Well, they turn out sociopaths. Some of the older ones.
That's why I call them "See You Next Tuesday" farms, which gets me into a lot of trouble. Anyway, moving on. Owen Knight, thank you very much for the £5 super chat, mate. That's very kind. In a twist of irony, Labour should leave a note on the Treasury desk written on a leaf of lettuce saying we have no money. Well, no, the Tories should leave that there. But maybe Labour could take a picture of a lettuce leaf with "we have no money." Because, spaffed it up the wall. £425 billion wiped off pensions by Liz Truss's mini budget.
And they should make more of that. I don't know why Labour don't make. They keep saying things like, "Oh, it tanks the economy," and then the fact checkers come out saying, "Well, technically not," because the way you measure economy is GDP. Yeah. But the damage she did was permanently wiping off value of people's pension pots that they need to retire on, and they should have done that. And that we're talking private pensions as well here. So they should have made a great deal of that.
Yeah,
because that affects the sort of people that the Tories are trying to win over with these tax cuts.
Yeah. Exactly. We've got a comment in here from Nick and Diff. Do you think Gemma Forte and Marina Perkis will rally around Labour because they seem to be edging away with candidacy issues, or is it a storm in a teacup? I don't think either Gemma or Marina are particularly wedded to Labour in any way.
No, they're not. No, they're not Labour supporters. No, they're pragmatically advocating that the way you make things better is with a Labour government.
Yeah, but also
they're fans of Labour.
Also advocating for tactical voting, which means that the Tories should be destroyed, because that's what we want to do. And to crush them. Christopher Ball saying, I remember the teacher from Eton who was found guilty of abuse of a pupil at Reading Crown Court a few years ago. Yeah, the company that is Eton, the private company, it still makes a lot of money. Private school, private company. Freckle Peony, my sister is against Labour bringing VAT for private schools. She sends her daughter to one and struggles as a result. I can see why she does. However, there is a bigger picture issue at stake.
Don't struggle. Send them to a state. There's nothing wrong with state schools. If your kid is hardworking and bright, they will get top grades at a state school. Yeah. Private schools exist purely to teach you how to be arrogant as hell and to give you a few connections. That is what it teaches you. It does not. They generally do not have brilliant academic. Yes, they have small class sizes and that helps. But if your kid is bright and puts the work in, they will get the best grades.
Yeah. Don Dudat is saying if you can't afford privately educated children, you shouldn't have them. And Jeff is saying, I'm a public boarding school survivor. There is serious abuse in these hellholes. Not many would survive survive Ofsted scrutiny. And I'm really sorry to hear that, Jeff. That is awful. But also,
I would send Ofsted straight in.
Completely correct.
If I was an education minister, I would send Ofsted in immediately. Ofsted do need a lot of reforms. Ofsted are not particularly fit for purpose. Part of the problem is what the government think they want Ofsted for, which is wrong. It doesn't, what they should want Ofsted for. Basically, the purpose of Ofsted should be, or the HMIs, the inspectorates, it should be the government say schools should do this. It should be the job of inspectors just to make sure schools are doing that. That's it. This idea of they're there to drive up standards. No. We have professional teachers running these schools. It's not like a hospital where these days you have administrators running them. Education is pretty much the last bastion of, even the people managing these things are educators themselves. They understand the profession. Some are better than others, sure, but nonetheless, it's a professional service. They all know what they're doing. They all need to know how to drive up standards. You as the government say, as the Department for Education say, this is what we expect you to do. These are what we expect you to focus on. These are your targets, and you only need to send inspectors in to make sure they're doing it. That's it. Don't have to go, you should be doing it like this or like that. Don't prescribe things. They know what they're doing. Just make sure that they're discharging their legal duties. And then send them into private schools to make sure they're doing it. Because I'll tell you what, there'll be a whole host of safeguarding issues flag up.
It is interesting that a lot of the people who are very pro private schools and don't want VAT on there are also quite against grammar schools, which allow kids from more deprived backgrounds to get decent grades. I don't particularly like that system. I think it should be comprehensive. I think that there shouldn't be private schools. I don't think there should be grammar schools either.
No, because the problem with grammar schools is the way you were selected was it was like, are you good enough to pass this trainable skill when you were 11 years old?
Yeah.
That one snapshot in your life.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
And it then damned you. If you weren't quite ready for it, or if you didn't have the practice for it, you were then damned for the
and generally it's parents who are better off, who have the can get the tutors in that you need to get those kids to pass the 11 plus or whatever it is they need to do to get into that school. The money to spend on music lessons so the kids can play musical instruments or extra sports stuff so they can have those sporting or musical qualifications which help getting into a grammar school. I think that's wrong, but to look at the horrific damage that private schools do to this country, and there was someone in the chat saying, Ernie making a really good point here, as Ernie always does, saying bullying culture in public schools is a major factor in what produces the sociopathic streak in our culture. So I think that at the moment, going after grammar schools is it's a bit of whataboutism at the moment. If we get rid of private schools, then we can turn our attention to fixing the grammar school comprehensive system. But at the moment, I mean, it's a mess. It's an absolute mess. You don't believe me? Go on privateschoolmafia.com and just look at that list. It's everyone you see on television, everyone you read in the newspapers, everyone you see in films, everyone you hear directing films, everyone who is allowed to do anything that earns you over £100,000 a year, except for the exceptionally talented and exceptionally lucky. Rest of us. And Captain Bart says, we figured out a way around the cane. We used to borrow our classmates' football shirts and put as many as possible under our strides, and it worked. Yeah, like the fact that they still had capital punishment, corporal punishment in these schools till a lot more recently than in other schools.
Yes, I mean, I was in school where it was just being phased out, and there were a few teachers that took quite a few years to adjust.
Yeah. Stephanie Wilson saying, I went to a grammar school and then a comprehensive.
I was a good boy. I only got hit by accident because I was quite good.
I went to grammar school and then a comprehensive. The difference was that I got proper teaching at the comprehensive. That's from Stephanie Wilson, which doesn't surprise me. Now, my school at the time that I went to it, it wasn't a grammar school, but it effectively was. It didn't have an exam to get in, but you had to have an interview. So it was a selective comprehensive when I went there. It's now a full grammar school because they came back. But the teaching wasn't that great. I've got to say, the reason why we got such fantastic grades is because the kids were smart who got in and could apply themselves. And also possibly a lot of the parents could afford to get tutors in to tutor the kids privately. Not great. Not really what you want from a state school education. John C., thank you very much for the super chat, mate. That's very kind. 1 billion was wiped off my company pension fund last year. Truss's neoliberal madness and possibly a bit of creative accounting from what is now a US-owned company. 1 billion of one pension fund. That is wild.
Because Kwasi Kwarteng was allowed to open his mouth for half an hour.
Yeah.
Because they didn't do anything. That was just them saying what they were going to do.
Yeah. Fetch Pie saying capital punishment in school. Now that would be extreme. It would be. I had someone saying yesterday, because my school's on the list for like the most entries to Oxford now. It wasn't when I was there. We weren't that smart. But it's like 28th on the list nationally. And someone was trying to use this to have one over me when I was going on about what damage private schools do. And I'm like, and shouldn't you be celebrating the fact that a state school manages to get that many kids into Oxford? But no, apparently. It makes me a big hypocrite. Because on the right, they look for converts. On the left, they look for traitors. And Leanne Scott says, gosh, late again. So yeah, I want to ask, so 5 weeks from now, we've got the actual election. I'd like to know what your
5
predictions...
weeks from now, Keir Starmer's coming back from the palace.
Hey, I'd like to hear some of your predictions, not for who's going to win, but for the rest of the campaign. What do you think it's going to look like? Are Labour going to be continuing to fight about Diane Abbott getting whether she can be selected or not? Or
no, because the nominations end next week. It'll be done dusted by then. All Labour have done wrong with this is let it drag out. They should have made the decision, because at the moment no one knows what's going on. Even like I said this morning. Like, people are going, oh, Diane Abbott's blocked. It's like, no, she's not. She's not even claiming she's blocked. She's saying she's heard she's been blocked. Keir Starmer's saying, we haven't decided to block her. That's not the same thing, because she hasn't been selected yet either. So what they should have done, and I will emphasise, Keir Starmer's not doing this. People must maybe have this image that Keir Starmer's going through the selections every day. He's out. He's in Scotland. He's talking about Great British Energy today. Yesterday he was talking about something else. He's not dealing with this. He has another team dealing with this. He appointed it. He is responsible. I'm not saying it's nothing to do with him. He decided which people should run that team and what their guidelines should be, but he's not actually doing it. So this mess it's caused by someone else. Now, it is a mess. It's a mess caused by Diane Abbott, but it is still a mess. And he should have said, right, let's nip this in the bud. And he should have said to them, I want a decision by the end of play. Is she being selected or not? And then it can be announced. And then whatever furore is happening anyway, at least you put an end to it. But there will definitely be an end to it next Friday, because that's the deadline for nominations.
Yeah. Just it.
Oh, someone's saying in the chat, Starmer's just confirmed Abbott can stand. Okay, well, done. So he
said that yesterday. He said that yesterday.
No, he didn't. No.
Oh, did he not?
No, yesterday. You have to be very careful with the language. Yesterday, he said no decision had been made to block her. That doesn't mean to say one wouldn't be made later on. Although I'm not seeing. I don't know where you've got it. I'll take your word for it. Whoever, sorry, in the chat, I've missed the name. But I'm not seeing anything. Usually you'd see that flash up on the Guardian because they're straight onto. Oh no, it is on the Guardian. Yeah, Keir Starmer has actually said she's free to stand. So she's basically just been making it up then.
Yeah.
Because no one's told her she was blocked. She says someone told her she was blocked. She didn't say she's had a letter saying she's blocked or a call from Labour HQ or anything. She just said, "Oh, I've heard from someone." So she's basically just made a fuss about nothing.
There's a photo that I want to share with you. Can you see my feed coming through, Phil?
Let me have a look. Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Sort of.
So here's a photo. Look at the difference in these two photos. It is just, it's beautiful.
I'll tell you what I will say here, though. It is funny, but it is also highly selective because if I was
just taking all the fun out of it, Phil.
No, I do like to be fair. If I was a Tory, I could find photos of Sunak smiling and taking selfies with people who wanted to be taking them with. What I would say, though, is that those aren't Labour supporters behind him. They're just young, look like nursing students or something. I don't know what they are.
Yeah.
So that is, that's a genuinely spontaneous one. He's not there with a load of Labour activists. So there is that. But I mean, at the end of the day, the stats don't lie. When you've got polls that are, saying that Rishi Sunak and the Tories' approval rating has gone down after the first week of campaigning, and Labour and Keir Starmer's has gone up. Yeah. And in fact, I've actually got a few more details in one. So Keir Starmer's favourability here. So never mind the net.
Can you move that a little bit? Can you move that a little bit?
I can put it above me.
No, just move it a bit to the right.
Oh,
there you go. Perfect.
Right.
Lovely.
So Keir Starmer, 37% have a favourable view to 50% unfavourable, 12% aren't sure. Angela Rayner there, 26%. So if we just look at favourability, 26%. Now Rishi Sunak, only 22% approve of him. 70% have an unfavourable view.
So that's like all Labour, all Greens, all Lib Dems, and a lot of Tories.
A fair few Tories, yeah.
That's mad, isn't it?
And then you look at the rest. I mean, Jeremy Hunt is the nearest one because the rest of them, if you've got over 50% who have no view one way or the other, then the stats are meaningless. Jeremy Hunt's the closest there, 70% favourability, 60% unfavourable. No chancellor during economically tough times is likely to get away with much credit. Unless they're really putting in a shift. But it does show that, for whatever people's views on certain politicians, the vast majority of politicians, most people don't know who they are.
Yeah, I know, because most people don't care about politics.
Exactly, and that's what I mean. That's what I mean.
We do.
Whatever's happening now, in theory, the Tories could completely get away with this disastrous first week and a half. Yeah. If, let's say, from the TV debate on Tuesday, they smartened up their image. The thing is, though, they're just useless. So I don't think they will. I think Rishi Sunak's useless. I think Team Sunak, I think the advisors around him are useless. I'm actually now starting to think that Isaac Leverdow is maybe only because if you think about it, because he has won, like he did mastermind their 2019 campaign and he helped Boris Johnson win Mayor of London contest. But now I'm thinking about it is maybe he can only win when the opposition aren't on top of their game. Crap.
Yeah, maybe.
Or at least aren't on top of their game.
Well, he didn't win in Australia, did he? He helped the Liberals, who are the Tories over in Australia, lose badly. Do you want to get rid of that graph so we can see you again? And also, I'll say...
That's more interesting.
Good old graphs. Alec, you can tell you're a physicist. Alec Barrett, thank you very much for the £5 super chat. I went to a grammar school. My dad spent the prior year teaching me how to pass exams, something I don't remember being taught at school. They teach them at private schools. There's mnemonics that you learn, and there's ways to pass exams. That don't mean that you understand what you need to understand. It just means that you can remember what you need to remember.
I used to do that, though, as a teacher, I will say. There were three aspects to my lessons. One was teaching the content. One was teaching exam technique. And the third part was teaching what I call exam fitness, which a lot of people don't teach either. which is exactly what it sounds. It's a bit like let's say if you're training to do football or something, so you'll learn the skills, then you'll do your practice, linking with other teammates. But then there's just your general fitness, you're running around the field and stuff like that. There's a lot of teachers don't really teach that aspect of it. They're getting that sort of exam fitness, that right state of mind, the ability to get through a stressful time. So I used to do quite a bit on that as well. With my students who used to do very well in exams.
Well, yeah, I mean that it is.
So there's a whole science to teaching. You can really get into it.
Do you know what? I used to not be much of a fan of exams. I always thought coursework was a better way of sorting out whether
there's some things
kids understood things. But now we've got AI writing everyone's essays. I'm going to go back to exams now because they can't use the AI.
What I would say is, for a good teacher, because even when I was teaching, okay, you might have not have had AI, but you had people who will get things off the internet anyway. What I would say is, if as a good teacher, it's different for universities because you can't possibly know. You've got like 200 students, you can't know them all. But as a teacher, you know when it's their work and when it's not.
Yeah.
You know when it's their work.
Lavy the Cat's in the chat saying, Isaac Flubberdove, some campaign genius he is, now been shown up as a one-trick pony that's full of pony.
I mean, there was a point at which I thought to myself, maybe Rishi Sunak's just completely ignoring him. Isaac Levido's going, "What you do this for? You mental or something?" And Sunak were just ignoring him. But now I'm just thinking, I keep seeing so many reports of stuff that I'm just thinking, no, I think he is just shit.
Yeah.
I think he's just made a lot of money being shit.
Trig mnemonic. This is for trigonometry. The old American sat on his car and hiccuped.
Yeah.
I remember just learning lists of things from a politics A level. It was just like bicameral, flexible, unitary, monarchical, parliamentary. About our democratic system. Craving Beer, thank you very much for the £5 super chat. I learned how to do well in IQ tests. I can regularly score 130 plus. I'm pretty stupid in reality. I don't think you're stupid, mate. Your grammar's spot on there, and your spelling. So yeah, thank you very much for the super chat, and the super chat was spot on as well. That's very kind of you. Peter M says, interesting. As a retired university teacher, I also used to stress the need for exam fitness to my students. Yeah, absolutely. And also don't forget, before we go any further, that whereas state schools have to follow the national curriculum, private schools don't. And they can just make up their own curriculum and teach what they want when they want it. And so if you, for instance, my stepdaughter at the moment is taking her GCSEs next year, and she has to choose her GCSEs, and she has to do RE. So she can't do art, which breaks my heart. As a militant atheist, Phil, I'm like, why is she having to do RE? Which is, come on, even someone who's, a man of faith, like, how can you justify that? Having to?
Well, you can't. I mean,
it's useless.
Obviously, it's not useless because it's understanding other people's cultures, but at the same time, in terms of the Bronze Age, in terms of being in the modern age.
Well, they're more from the Bronze Age, aren't they?
I don't know. Islam was much more recent.
Well, okay, so was Sikhism, Mormonism.
But I mean, I had hardly any choices. My sister had way more choices than I did. So when I was doing my GCSEs, we did 10 GCSEs. I only got to choose 2 of them.
Oh, wow.
I had to do history. Didn't like that.
Well, I did history, but I couldn't do geography because I had to do CDT. Had to do craft design and technology.
I actually dodged a bullet there because actually tech was one of the ones I sort of chose, but because that was another thing. I wanted to choose German and Latin.
Yeah.
But I couldn't do both because they were in the same pool. It's like, who puts languages in the same pool as each other? So I could do the German because that was of more interest to me.
Yeah.
And then, so I thought, well, I'll just do a technology. And I actually put down design and communication, which was technical drawing. And this was the funny thing. I encouraged my mates to do it as well, so we could be in the same class. And they all got in, and then I was told. So I had a CDT teacher take me one side. He said, So Philip, you've put yourself down for design and realization. I said, I haven't. He says, well, you're down on the list for design and realization. And he was trying to tell me in the most PC way you could think of that it was basically for the bottom set kids.
Oh, nice.
It was woodwork basically. And he said, you should be doing that. And I said, no, I put down design and communication. He said, it must have got full up then. Yeah. So even though I'd put my name on it quite early on and then encouraged my mates knocked me off because they didn't bother looking at the order it was putting. So I ended up doing design technology, which is probably better for me in the end.
No, I hated doing CTT because it wasn't electronics, because it was craft more than design or technology, because we didn't have the computers, because we were underinvested for many, many years under the Tory government. And this was in the mid-90s. So it was, after 16 years of Tory government. But I don't have any qualification whatsoever in geography. And I've said this on the channel before, I don't believe you can understand history if you don't understand geography. It's as simple as that.
I wouldn't have chosen to do either. And I was made to do both.
I would have liked to have done both, and I wasn't allowed to. You see, this is where if you go to a private school, you get these kind of choices. But in a state school, you have to do the national curriculum. And if the government decides one year that they want all the kids to do craft design and technology, all the kids have to do craft design and technology for 1 year. And then they sacked it off because it was really daft. They panicked because they saw this internet revolution, computer IT revolution coming. And they were like, we need to train kids up to use computers. I'm like, we were all using computers at that point because we'd all grown up with Speckies and Amigas. Anyway, and it
just said there, I guess Phil picked German to read the famous Goethe letters. No, I chose German because I could basically already speak German because I had a Polish uncle who taught me German. I can't speak it anymore, by the way, but I was actually pretty good. So it was actually quite an easy one to do. I got 100% in the exam. So it was like, I could speak German then.
Yeah. Leaf Hunches is saying, as a Dutch atheist, I think it's insane not to have religious studies. It's basically geography with sociology. Well, it's not really, because you're not learning anywhere apart from the Middle East. Pretty necessary to understand at least part of the world. We don't all go travel, Graham. I think that could be covered in geography. Like, geography could be covered in geography, rather than, here's what people believed 2,000 years ago in this part of the world. Anyway, but I have no qualification in geography, even though I've been to every country in the world without flying. Something that Google still doesn't believe that I was the first person to do. So if you want to grab this link that I've just put into the chat and send that off to, type in who was the first person to go to every country in the world without flying. And when it comes up with the wrong answer, go to the feedback and say, actually, it was Graham Hughes. Here's his Guinness World Record certificate. Anyway, entry on the Guinness World Records site. I'm in the book as well, to 2016, page 200, Guinness Book of Records. Anyway, Phil, how you doing? Shameless self-promotion there. Everyone's talking about how crap their school computers were. Countdown to power. My school was using Acorn Electronics and BBC computers in 1992.
They were brilliant. Acorn Electrons were amazing.
We had Acorn.
We didn't have one. We had BBC Micros, and we had for the technology students, we had an Archimedes with a trackball.
Yeah.
Which was rubbish, by the way. Trackballs are shit. But nonetheless, at the time, it's quite swish.
I remember handheld scanners. Do you remember like a scanner? And you used to run it down the page. Scanner. A handheld scanner. That was so cool.
When I was first a new teacher, that was what I did when I wanted to create handouts. So I could do it across a book. Now we just nick the image off online.
I used to like desktop publishing, all that kind of stuff, and doing crappy pictures of Garfield, in really, really low res graphics, 4-bit graphics. Oh, them were the days. Don't Do That says, in woodwork we made coasters, in metalwork we made bottle openers, and in pottery we made ashtrays. No high expectations at my school. Tim says,
that's what this design and realization for. They made pipe racks and stuff. Who smokes a pipe even then? But that's what they did, and that's why this teacher took me to one side, because he was basically trying to be nice and saying, "Look, Phil, this is for the thick kids." And he thought I'd put down for it, and I hadn't. Someone else, some other teacher had obviously, the class I'd put down for was full, and they just moved me to another one.
Yeah. Mr. Whip said, I do think that when it comes to choosing your GCSEs, English and maths are absolutely essential. after that, I do think it should be up to the kids and what they are good at. Because if you are forced to do a qualification in something that you're crap at, it just makes you miserable. Every day you go and it just feels stupid because you can't get your head around why a table is masculine or feminine. How do you know? But yes, no computers when I was at school, but I'm a grown, says Leanne Scott. We're talking about Acorn Electron being the baby brother to the BBC Micro. And Christopher Ball's showing off. We had a state-of-the-art Windows 3.1 machine in 1993. Them were the days. So you didn't have to type in CD, colon, backslash, change directory, run. Was it run? And then you put
I can't remember.
Run, rabbit, bunny rabbit
the
ears.
First PC
Doom.exe.
The first PC I got was Windows 95. So before that, I had an Atari ST.
You were an Atari boy. Oh, that makes sense because I was an Amiga boy.
Yeah.
So
the
basically,
meditation number.
I had I had a girlfriend, an Amiga, because that's Spanish for friend who's a girl. Anyway, countdown to power. I was really failed on maths. All the kids in my school were. At one point, we had PE teachers doing maths classes because they were so short-staffed. That's disgraceful. It's absolutely disgraceful.
Well, we did. I mean, my maths classes in the first comprehensive I went to were not auspicious. My first maths teacher died like after a week. So he set us a homework and he never marked it because he died.
Oh my God. What did you do to him, Phil?
I didn't do anything. He died of a tropical disease he picked up on holiday.
Bloody hell. That's awful.
And then so we had like just this like supply teacher for the rest of the year. So we didn't actually have a proper maths teacher for the whole of the first year.
Yeah.
This was the top set. They didn't give us, they didn't like give us. It was quite meritocratic if you think about it now. They didn't like swap things around and give the supply teacher to the kids who couldn't even add up to 3 yet. But never mind. Yeah, first maths teacher, the first homework. I still remember what the homework was on. It was on triangular and square numbers. It never got marked. Yeah. And I thought at that point, well, there's no point in me doing homework, so it just kills teachers, so I won't do anymore. And then teachers used to complain at me for not doing homework. I
don't want to kill you. I'm trying to save your life. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, we get a bit off topic. Was there anything else before we wrap up that you wanted to talk about this week? Lib Dems, Tories, the Greens. Have they launched the campaign yet? I don't know.
No, I think they're launched. Oh, actually, no, they have. They launched it earlier this week. Not that you would know because no one's reporting on it.
Well, I think it's disgraceful. Last night, Nigel Farage was on Question Time. He's not standing as MP. He's not the leader of the party. They got 2 councillors in the local elections. The Lib Dems and the Greens between them got hundreds and hundreds, got nearly 1,000 of them.
But also, the Lib Dems are probably favourites to win that constituency in the election. So you could, although I don't think that's necessary. I mean, some people are less charitable than I am. You could see that as trying to affect the election because you've allowed not but a Conservative representation on that panel.
Yeah.
And you've not allowed a Lib Dem when it's in Epsom, which is between the Lib Dems and Conservatives in all probability, and the Lib Dems might well be in pole position, looking at the polls as far as I can tell. And also on the Nigel Farage thing, so like, when she's saying basically at one point Fiona Bruce said, "What are you doing here?" She says, "Well, you asked me on." She says, "No, we didn't. We wanted Lee Anderson." so Lee Anderson bottled it. Nigel Farage has bottled it because they're going on about Richard Tice wants to debate with Rishi Sunak, and Rishi Sunak would be very, very wise to steer clear of that, which I think he has been. Yeah. But Count Binface has challenged Nigel Farage. Now, Count Binface will get more votes than Nigel Farage in this election, so, that's more on his level, to debate him on Brexit, and Nigel Farage has turned him down. So, there's who's bottling who, really. I thought that was hilarious. Fiona Bruce is hardly my favourite person for that show. And it was
she did hit back and say, well, actually, we didn't even want you.
Yeah, like, what are you doing? What are you doing on my show? You asked me. No, I bloody didn't.
No, we didn't.
Lee Anderson.
We wanted Lee Anderson, who was actually an MP, which is more than that Farage creep has ever been. We get a lot of...
That must irk him, don't you think? That must irk him. Posh boy like Nigel Farage and an oik former miner
Yeah.
wins his first ever crack at Parliament, and there he is, lost 7 times. Last time to a guy who's dressed as a dolphin. That must piss him off something rotten.
You suggested I should travel around America later on in this year.
Someone should do that. Someone who's got the time and the money should travel, should tour, should do a like stalk Nigel Farage on the presidential campaign dressed as a dolphin.
Yeah.
Love it in Florida. They'll just think they're getting.
I'll do it if I wasn't banned from America for visiting too many countries. Phonebox Chicken saying, had the Commodore 64, then Mega Drive. First proper computer was a knockoff IBM 286 from Golden Arcade in Sham Su Po. Yeah, my first proper computer was an Amiga. Well, I guess was an Amiga a proper computer? It was, wasn't it? It was
my
rubbish. First IBM was a 286, I think, and then a 386, so I could play Doom. And I got 486. I know I got a 386 so I could play Wolfenstein. And then a 486 so I could play Doom without it being like incredibly slow and blocky. Right, guys, when can we expect the manifestos? 3 weeks before the election.
I mean, the Tories have got to write theirs first. I don't know about Labour. I don't know why they're delaying, in all honesty. We know it's ready. I don't know. I've no idea what the thinking there is.
Maybe they're waiting until the candidates are all in place.
Maybe, but at the same time, I mean, Tony Blair released it basically about a year early. As soon as it was ready, they went, here you go. Now, I understood they couldn't do that because too much had to keep changing, but nonetheless, it was like...
yeah, they should get it out.
They can get it out now.
Yeah. Then control the narrative, won't they?
I mean, exactly. I mean, at the moment, it's like people are now moaning about the fact all we can talk about is the daily disasters. Like, when can we start talking about the policies? So just get it out there.
Johan is saying Amiga was more than a proper computer. It was a masterpiece. I have to agree. That's
why the Guru meditation number is because it kept crashing.
It never. No, it
kept crashing.
No, it didn't.
Rubbish.
I had this argument with someone I used to share an office with because they had a Mac and I had a PC. And he was like, oh, but, PCs crash all the time. And so we had a little chart on the wall. And every time his Mac crashed, we put a little thing on the wall, and every time my PC crashed, and do you know how many each one crashed? The exact same number of times. Right. Fact. And also, Crowd Down to Power, last comment of the afternoon. I watched Quagglebox video when I got her in last night. Watching it with you and the chat was the first time I've been able to bear watching Question Time for years. Thanks, lol. Okay, we'll be back with Quagglebox next Thursday at 8 o'clock for the next whoever's on for that. But yeah, until then... We've got a load of shows coming up. We've got the Labour Social, which is tonight at 9 o'clock. And then on Sunday at 8 o'clock, we'll be having the next episode of How We Fix Britain. And then I'll be back for Morning Brew at 9:30 on Monday. So yeah, are you out tonight, Phil?
Are you going to the gym? I'm not sure.
There's an election on. There's an election.
I know. Yeah, but I've also got to get a load of stuff done. I'm in London on Wednesday. So I've got to get 2 videos done for that, and I'm going to have to apologise profusely because the obvious video to do on Wednesday is a debrief on the TV, on the very first TV debate. But it's like, I'll be in London. So, ourselves.
Do you know, there's just before we came on, Phil and I were talking about what we're going to do with this channel after Labour win. And Nick and Divis, but when Labour win, can we have a weekly retro gaming live chat? Absolutely, that is a fantastic idea. So join us for that. Might do something about the name. And I did say that was going to be the last chat, but we've had a super chat. Thank you very much. Oh, press the wrong button. Press the outro button instead of the super chat button. There you go, super chat. Alex the Sixth, thank you very much. Labour should wait until the Tories release theirs, or they'll copy Labour and say they'll do it for free.
They'll do that anyway. They'll make up any old shit. It's. I'm still curious to see whether it'll be quite funny if that national service thing gets toned down a bit in it.
Yeah.
Because I think that point that Wes Streeting made last night was really good, and Keir Starmer could, if Sunak even mentions it in the TV debates, he should fire back with that.
Yeah, definitely. They've done their service.
Because that also appeals to older voters as well. It's a brilliant line.
Yeah, it is. Anyway, so thank you very much to Phil and myself, I guess. And to all our socialites in the chat, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. And thanks for all of the wonderful, the super chats. They've been awesome. Give us a like on the way out, and I'll hopefully see you tonight at 9 o'clock. And until then, I'll say hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.